me that it exists. Now we have The Forever Purge. This was another first-time watch for me. Never gave this one a chance, and it's going underneath painful. This franchise just has no juice left in the tank. There's just none. I mean, this was a franchise that was just weird. It starts off with an interesting idea, doesn't really realize it in the first film. You get The Purge Anarchy, which I think is easily the best of this franchise, and Election Year, which is kind of diminishing returns, but similar to Anarchy. And then from there, they're just trying to milk this franchise. Let's do it prequel. Let's retcon everything that happened, and we'll just keep going with this concept. And so the Forever Purge is taking, much like the title suggests, the Purge, which is one night, 12 hours, and making it to where there's a group of people in the country that want to have it all year round, all day long. And it's a movie that it's diminishing returns. It's diminishing returns. The same exact thing that we've seen in the other movies, but not done nearly as well. The characters aren't nearly as interesting. By now, the concept is just bled dry. And the social commentary, the political messaging in this movie is kind of pathetic because it's very direct. It's very in your face where they're going to be going with some kind of a message, and then they just never actually say anything. So it's very weird. You've got America, and there's a lot of commentary on immigration and the Mexican border by the end of the film because America's been taken over by these Forever Purge people that the Americans are now trying to get over the border into Mexico for safe haven. So it's kind of like reversing the real world situation and trying to hold a mirror up to us, but it's like, well, what are you saying about that pen? You're just using that and you're not doing anything with it. So I didn't enjoy this movie, and it also was just way too long. Maybe I was just bored by it, but it felt like a half an hour. I'm like, fucking end! A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Dream Child. This one for me, while not being anywhere near as bad as Freddy's Dead, is still a slow death. I do not like this movie whatsoever. The one redeeming factor that I like in this film is the first kill, Dan's kill, the motorcycle kill. That's one of my favorite kills in the franchise. Everything else aside from that sucks. I think that they try to do the same exact thing they did in Part 4, where they don't have a script, they get a director, and they just let him kind of cobble this movie together as it goes along. And this guy, in my opinion, didn't do anywhere near as good of a job as Rennie Harlan with Part 4. And even Part 4 has a laundry list of problems. So the whole extra jokey comedic tone is just continuing to rise by this point. It's no longer funny, it's no longer cute, it's no longer entertaining, it's just kind of embarrassing, and it gets even worse. We have the main character of Alice. I like her in Part 4 and Part 5. She's okay, but again, she's just in a shit movie. She could have done a lot better with a better story, a better script. The whole concept of Freddy taking over the dreams of an infant is an interesting concept that they just don't execute very well. I hate the look of Freddy, the makeup in this, and beyond that first kill, all of the kills in this movie are just fucking silly. I mean, you've got the force-fed gluttony kill, which is just gross. You've got the comic book kill, which could have been interesting to look at, but it's just very campy and goofy. You've got these, like, swimming pool sequences that didn't end up being a kill, but it almost was. I just don't enjoy this movie. I've given it just as many chances as every other Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and there's just very little in this one that entertains me. Sitting right next to Freddy 5 on the bus, we've got Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. This movie can go fuck itself. This is my least favorite Halloween film. Most people say Resurrection or Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. This one, to me, is the worst. Not only is it just objectively a really bad movie and a really bad follow-up to Part 4, especially with how great the ending is to that, but subjectively, this film bores the living shit out of me. I cannot get through it without feeling like I need to fall asleep. You start to bring in the Cult of Thorn storyline here and the Man in Black, which is just weird Hail Mary ideas that never come together in a good way in this little Thorn trilogy, as it was named afterwards. I think that they completely waste Danielle Harris here by making her a mute for most of the runtime with very little even sensible explanation to that, or sensical explanation, I should say. Even Dr. Loomis is not a likable guy in this film. He's got one good line about hell spitting him back out, and other than that, he's just really creepy. He's lunacy at this point. He's losing his mind as the constant threat of Michael Myers and the constant pursuit of him. I think the way that they kill Rachel is absolutely unforgivable. Just to replace her with Tina, one of the most insufferable fucking characters in horror movie history. I could go on and on. I hate this movie. I despise it. It's my least favorite Halloween film, and it's absolutely a slow-ass death. Now we have Dominion, and this one is painful for me. Now, I'm not really a big fan of Exorcist at the beginning, but I do prefer that to Dominion. For those that don't know, Dominion was originally the Exorcist prequel that was shot. And the movie was almost complete, and then the studio said, nope, this isn't working, go back to the drawing board. They got a new director in Rennie Harlan and reshot the entire fucking movie and released the reshoot version, which was Exorcist the Beginning, first. Eventually, they released this one, maybe a limited theatrical release, but mostly everybody saw it on DVD or VOD. And it's a very different movie. It's still the same basic plot. It's still the same main character and the casting of the main character. Everything else is totally different. This is more of a drama. This is more of an exploration of faith and exploration of the character of Father Merrin, which on paper should make this better since the other one is just a very surface level horror movie. But it doesn't feel like an Exorcist movie to me. It doesn't feel like it really belongs in this franchise, and it's pretty boring. And it leads up to a third act that I think is very silly. I mean, you got this guy that gets possessed, and then he's just like floating in a cave with a bald head, and it's very silly to me. And so if I'm going to pick one, even though none of them are very good, I'm going to pick the one that's at least more of a horror film, has some thrills, has some kills, and has Pazuzu in the third act. This one, to me, just bored me, and I'll never have any interest in watching it again. Now we have the newest addition to the Scream franchise in Scream 5, and I had a really good time with this one. I'm sticking it in bloody good time. I've said it before, very casual Scream fan, but I think that all of these movies are actually pretty good, even the third one. So Scream 5, I had a lot of faith in it. It's been a long time since we have seen Scream, and the big question mark everybody had is, are you going to be able to do a Scream film without Wes Craven? And in my opinion, yes, they succeeded with it. They succeeded a lot with it. I think that this is a really good continuation of the franchise's story. I like the way that they utilize the legacy characters for the most part. I think Dewey by far has the best treatment in this movie, though some would agree. Some don't like the way that his character turns out. I disagree with that. I like most of the new cast here, especially the ones that are signed up to be recurring characters that we are inevitably going to see in next year's Scream 6. The reveals of the killers I thought were really obvious. That was the biggest issue that I have with the film. I figured it out like within the first act. And I wasn't really searching for it. It wasn't like I was sitting there trying to analyze everything. It was just one thing happened and I'm like, that's something that would really lead to a killer's motivation there, and it worked out, and I was kind of disappointed by that. The kills, I still wish they would get a little more creative, but at least they were a little more vicious, a little more mean in this film. And overall, I enjoyed it as a casual Scream fan. It's not the best, it's far from the worst, it's just a really good time for me if I'm in the mood for a Scream film. Oh, God. Ripped my news about the movie, and there was rumors and news and rumors and news and rumors for years. Then finally they're like, we're doing it. It's shooting. There's a new director. It's not Don Coscarelli. We're finally going to end this franchise. And I was so excited that the movie was actually going to happen because it felt like we were just never going to get the conclusion. And then this piece of shit drops, and this is just an abomination for this franchise. I think that every single thing that they try to do, they fall on their face. I think that most of the casting here just acts like they don't even care anymore, which I guess I kind of get because they were getting dicked around for well over a decade, but none of them are very good. Even Reggie, who's always good in these movies, was not very good in this. You can tell that the director was not Don Coscarelli. There is some really bad CGI. Like, there's a shot of a gigantic orb that just looks horrendous. Like, bad sci-fi movie level bad. I think that the way that they decide to follow this up and close out the story by not really answering anything and suggesting a lot of possible explanations while not committing to any of them, I think it's a real disservice to the franchise because all of the things that they bring up in this movie out of nowhere regarding Reggie's dementia and is it all in his head, is it all made up, I think that that absolutely kills the franchise if you're trying to suggest that maybe that's actually what's been going on for 5 fucking movies. So I could go on and on. I've watched this movie twice, and the second time I hated it even more. I really am going to choose never to watch it again if I can get away with it. As a Phantasm fan, we deserve much better. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Remake. Oh my god, we actually have a horror classic on this fucking list. Look, remember what I said earlier about remakes? This is one of my favorite ones. I absolutely adore this movie. I think that it is the best Texas Chainsaw movie. I think it's a very dark and grim and morbid, but yet very entertaining and slick version of this story. I understand those that grew up with the original that hold that in a very dear to their hearts. I'm not one of those people. So I watched this one. I love this. This is my preferred version of the film, of this storyline, of these characters. I think that Leatherface is at his scariest in this movie. His mask is better in the next film that we're going to talk about, but I think he's at his best as far as the fright factor in this. I think that Arlie Ermey's sheriff here is arguably the scariest character of the entire franchise, even over Leatherface, and that's a tall order. I love all of the characters for the most part, all of like the victim characters. Jessica Biel gets a little aggravating in the movie just because she keeps doing the stupid horror character thing and just won't keep going, but it's one of those things with horror movies. You know, if the 13th, A New Beginning, The Roy Chronicles. This one's a kill 2 hours for me. I have never hated this movie. It's never been one of my favorites, but I've never found it to be as terrible as people make it out to be. It's oftentimes hated because it's not technically Jason Voorhees in this movie, and so it gets that Halloween 3 effect, where because Michael Myers isn't in it, it's automatically garbage. Well, stylistically, visually, it might as well be Jason Voorhees. It's a Friday the 13th film through and through. It's got the most kills, got the most nudity, so there's that. But it's a movie where there's a copycat killer when they thought they were done with Jason Voorhees, and after this they said, nope, bring that motherfucker back. But I do have fun with this one. It's extremely campy. It's extremely goofy and extremely silly, so you either have to vibe with that or not. If it's not your thing, you're going to hate it. If you can have fun with this really overly cheesy 80s tone and bad 80s writing, it's actually a pretty decent time. Now we are at Prometheus, and this one is also a kills 2 hours for me. I've never really liked this movie all that much. The only reason that it's at kills 2 hours is because I think that it is masterfully directed by Ridley Scott. It looks gorgeous. There is some amazing set design, some amazing effects, some amazing shots and cinematography. Very good acting, especially by Michael Fassbender, and his character is honestly the only reason why I do somewhat value these two movies in this little prequel trilogy that we get here, because it's a very interesting character that's written and acted very well. But this was marketed and this was hyped up as a prequel to Alien. And that seems like the secondary priority of this movie. It's much more of an exploration of creation and life's relationship with its creator and vice versa. And a lot of these big ideas that Ridley Scott is trying to philosophically explore in this film. And it just happens to put a couple of building blocks in place that will eventually lead to the original Alien. And as somebody that loved the Alien franchise, that's the stuff that I came for. So there's a lot of people that loved what this movie was, and they actually loved the fact that it wasn't what one of us simpletons would write as an Alien prequel. It was something very different and unexpected. But I'm somebody that I want what was promised to me. And we'll talk about it in the next one, but even Alien Covenant kind of pulled the same bait and switch for me. So Prometheus, while I understand why some absolutely love it and adore it for what it is, for me, it's always a very awkward watch that I'm never really all that entertained by. Oh, see Chucky. Oh, you poor. Look, I've given this movie so many chances. I really have. I've watched it probably more times than I've given chances to Freddy's Dead and Dream Child here. I just don't understand what they were going for with this movie. I don't enjoy it. I know that they were just trying to just let it loose and have fun and be ultra goofy and campy with the movie. And you've got Jennifer Tilly, who does the voice of Tiffany and was playing Tiffany in the previous movie, is also now playing herself as the actress Jennifer Tilly. And Tiffany, who is played by Jennifer Tilly, has an infatuation with the actress Jennifer Tilly. And just that alone is like, what the fuck are you guys doing? But it just keeps going from there. You've got the